So, good morning everyone. I'm Maria K. Janessa Melihor and I will be the first one to discuss our topic. So, our topic is all about the two types of pleasure, which are the quantity and the quality. So, when we say quality, it is the higher pleasure, and those are pleasure that feeds one's mind and soul. Whereas the quantity, it is the lower pleasure which associated with mere sensual satisfactions or fulfillment. So, for Bentham, the only things that determines the value of a life or ended the value of an event or action is the amount of pleasure contained in that life or the amount of pleasure produced as a result of that event or action. So, Bentham utilitarianism is maximizing because it does not merely require that pleasure is promoted, but that the greatest pleasure for the greatest number is secured. This means that some action that leads to pleasure will still not be morally good acts if another action that could have produced even more pleasure in that setting was rejected. Thus, for example, if you gain some pleasure from spending money on a new book, but that money could have produced more pleasure if it had been donated to a local charity for the homeless, then buying a new book would morally wrong, even though it lead to some pleasure because it did not maximize the total amount of pleasure that was possible in that circumstance. So basically, Bentham is only differ in the quantity of pleasure. So John Stuart Mill was a follower of Bentham who deviated Bentham's view of pleasure and developed his own version. While Bentham considered only quantity of pleasure, Mill considered both quantity and quality of pleasure. Because for him, pleasure is not just confined to quantity or amount but more on its quality. Thus, he claims that pleasure are of two types, which are the quantity and the quality. Sinasabi din ni Mill na mas lamang yung pleasure of the mind and spirit kaysa pleasure of the flesh and blood. So just like what I said earlier, when we say quality, it is the higher pleasure, and those are pleasure that feeds one's mind and soul. Whereas the quantity, it is the lower pleasure which associated with mere sensual satisfaction or fulfillment. Quantity also differ in the amount of pleasure they can get. So next, with Mill famous and unforgettable line, it's better to be a human being dissatisfied than a pig satisfied. Better to be Socrates dissatisfied than a fool satisfied. This quote varies based on what makes an individual satisfied or dissatisfied. Humans have many aspects to their lives that all contribute to how satisfied they are with their lives. It's better to be a human being dissatisfied than a pig satisfied. Both pigs and humans are animals, but they are satisfied in different ways. Better to be Socrates dissatisfied than a fool satisfied. So a fool can be satisfied, but he will not see all the aspects that Socrates will see, thus making him ignorant to the reason for Socrates' dissatisfactions. So Socrates might say that the fool's satisfaction is not the kind that he would want. He would want a much more fulfilling satisfaction than one who seeks common ones such as wealth, fame, and etc. So, a specific and simple example that would make this idea clearer, let's assume that your parents give you a weekly allowance of 1,000 pesos. Are you going to use it all on food, alcohol, and other bodily vices such cigarettes and the like, or would you rather use some of it to buy an ethics book to enlighten your mind and spirit? According to Mill's advice, one should use some of it to nourish their intellect and spirit in addition to their physical wants and cravings.
Hello everyone, I am Marco Chinlinate and my topic is all about the critical assessment of utilitarian in ethics. So before we proceed to the discussion, let us know first what is utilitarianism. So utilitarianism is a belief that a morally good action is one that helps a greatest number of people. So here, let us criticize the strengths and the weaknesses of utilitarian in terms of ethics. So in number one, it means that it prioritizes the vast people that can benefit a certain goods or services. So like for example, our Philippine government, they make policies, laws, acts that can benefit the citizen of this country, that can benefit us. So in number two, So, utilitarian view believes that we humans, we better choose what are those pleasurable things over than not. So, number three, utilitarian in ethical theory, it advocates the actions that foster happiness and pleasures and oppose the actions that can cause unhappiness and harm. So when we deal with social interactions, economic progress, and political decisions, utilitarianism would aim for the betterment of the society as a whole. So in number four, so here there are two categorization of pleasures, the higher order pleasures and the lower order pleasures. So in higher order pleasures, it acquires to intellectual, social, and creative enjoyment, while the lower order pleasures it obtained through sex and eating. So in number five, so when we talk about hedonic calculus, it is a method of working out the sum of the pleasures and in pain produced by our actions. Through this method, we can be able to know what are those actions that can goes into much more pleasurable one. So in number six, we need to consider those consequences first. So way back when I was in senior high school, I remember one of my teachers said that it is important to think 8,000 times before to decide and do it by action. Number seven, so here, utilitarianisms are inclusive to everyone else's. So whether we are just an ordinary man or woman. So in number eight, so since utilitarian ethics does not judge any action as good or bad right away, but it looks for its possible consequences. So in number nine, so utilitarianism can be found in politics, economics, and business. That's why it's considered as valid intellectual philosophy. The last number for the strength of utilitarianism, number 10. So utilitarianism here is gives equal value and equal treatment to everyone else's. So we're done with the strength of utilitarianism. So let's proceed to the weaknesses of utilitarian in terms of ethics. So weakness number one. So here, it makes it weakness for utilitarian in terms of ethics because it gives difficulties in providing a proper consequences of an action. So weakness number two, way back to the example of the film Robin Hood. So he steal to the rich and give it to the poor. So the purpose is good, but the methods is bad. So we always remember that the ends does not justify the means. So weakness number four. So it means that not all the majority are correct, but the minority sometimes have points. So weakness number six. So like for example, the duty to tell the truth and the duty to help someone in need, to cover what are those they think good for them. So weakness number seven. So it means that they make individual feeling as their criteria in choosing the act of good or right. So weakness number eight. So to simply understand what are the pleasurable or happiness to someone may not be pleasurable to the others. So weakness number nine, utilitarianism always favor those actions that can produce good consequences. So the last number for the weakness in utilitarian in terms of ethics, number 10. So it means that all of our actions has a purpose. So this is the end of my report. Thank you.
The immoral justifications of Duterte's anti-drug war. Utilitarian doctrine. Duterte has never explicitly explained his rationale for mass killing. What he expressed is time and time. Duterte's inaugural address, he gave a glimpse of the basis for his worldview. I have seen how illegal drugs destroyed individuals and families. And to his Sona, he said, human rights must work to uplift human dignity, but human rights cannot be used as a shield or an excuse to destroy the country, your country, and my country. The moral philosophy underlying the anti-drug war is utilitarianism. A utilitarianism is a theory that determines right from wrong by focusing on outcomes. For example, in extrajudicial killing of Duterte's administration, more lives was lost, but Duterte did not regret to his decision because he know that this is for the sake or for the good of the majority. Duterte war is stated as consequentialism. A consequentialism is a theory that says whether something is good or bad, it depends on its outcome or the action that brings more benefits than harm is good. The first argument against the utilitarian doctrine. The first reason is that our constitutions disallow it. In regards, the entire Bill of Rights contained in Article 3 of our Constitution is worthy of our study. Section 1, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, and property without due process of the law, nor shall any person be denied the equal protection of the law. For example, if you are committed a crime like you kill someone, the law has no right to deprive you from your natural living if the case is under investigation and you have no right and you have the right to have an equal protections of the law. Section 14, paragraph 1. No person shall be held to answer for a criminal offense without due process of the law. Duterte said that the influence of drug reduced human beings to bestial state. As his final judgment, the drugs addicts are no longer viable as human beings and that junkies are not human. In his inaugural speech, he declared that he don't care about human rights. While reading the list of government officials engaged in drugs and said, "There is no due process in my mouth." Second argument against the utilitarian doctrine. The second reason is that the desirable consequences expected from the war cannot be determined with absolute certainty. Neither they can guaranteed in the long term. The dirty drug war has produced a beneficial result in our nation. The beneficial effects of the war continue through time or even just up the end of the 36 years term. The PNP has claimed, and there is a statistical evidence that the crime has gone down.